Welcome again to Cooperative Conversations, a live stream series where we connect you to the real stories of Australian primary producers who are working and growing together in cooperatives. It's obviously been a few tough years for agriculture and the Australian economy in general, but it has highlighted the great importance of Australian farmers, Australian fishers and Australian foresters, not only to the country, but of course to our economy. My name's Pete Lewis, and one way or another, I've been helping Australian farmers tell the great stories of food and fibre production over the past 25 years. Now, over the past 6 months, we've heard an enormous amount about we're all in this together. Tonight, we're going to have a story of a group of competitors that saw value in working together, and as a result, they've become one of Australia's biggest suppliers of blueberries. They've got a great story to tell about how they transformed their businesses through collaboration, through innovative marketing, and overcoming some initial setbacks that reluctantly brought them all together, some would say. But before we get underway, we'd love to hear from you once again. And we've got a poll running again tonight. The question that we're asking tonight is, what are the biggest pain points for a farming cooperative? There's a few choices for you. For example, is it member engagement? Is it creating sufficient scale? Or is it the perennial issue of raising capital? Click on the poll on the live chat to the right of this stream to select your answer. Now, as I said, we're tonight joined by a businessman, farmer and a leader of one of Australia's most innovative cooperatives. The Oz Group is a locally owned and operated berry business on the north coast of New South Wales around Coffs Harbour, and it has between 140 and 150 members. Stephen Thandi, you've been chairman since last year. Tell us a little bit about the Oz Group Cooperative.
Pete, the Oz Group Cooperative is farmer owned. It's essentially a pack house, and we offer other services with it, like a distribution business. Our distribution is actually done through Driscoll's Australia, who is our marketing partners. We also offer basically a one-stop shop for our farmers. We have our own rural store they can actually get their farming needs from. We source genetics for our farmers from around the world. We also supply our agronomy and compliance team to our farmers.
Now, the part of Australia where you're based, Stephen, is possibly best known for bananas, and you had a bit of a hand in those yourself as an introduction into agriculture and getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, when I finished my HSC back in '77, I went into banana farming with my father. As years progressed, the industry wasn't going crash shot, and around the late 80s, my brother wanted to open up a glass business, and he asked me to go in with him on that. So I moved out of the banana industry into a different sort of business. And
you circled back to the farm though, due to some problems with one of your tenants.
The banana prices were going really bad around the early 2000 years, and the tenant, which I totally understand, they couldn't make a living off the farming because I'd gone into glass, I wasn't farming anymore, so I'd leased that property out. So he asked if he could break the lease. I said, not a problem at that stage. Yeah, I said, look, I totally understand where you are, the industry's at.
And obviously a few round the kitchen table discussions. And in the course of that, your wife suggested a completely different agricultural commodity, berries.
Yeah, when the tenant left the property, he actually cleaned it up properly for us and left it in a good state. And we did a bit of hobby farming, and we dibbled and dabbled in a few avocados and a few lemons and limes and stuff like that, just to keep the farm clean. And then one day she actually suggested, why don't we grow our own berries there? And that came out from where she was working. Like she used to work for, we call it the big farm around here. And all her friends, as they transitioned from bananas to berries, all were leaving the big farm and going to work on their own farm. So she's, why don't we go into berries? I was okay. Yeah, it was simple.
Now, the cooperative was first put in place about 7 years ago after what I understand was a pretty comprehensive look at some other business models, company structures, different things. How did you and why did you settle on the cooperative approach?
Our model here was sort of, the growers had got together back probably in 2001 at one stage when it first started, the berry farming around here, the growers away from bananas. And what happened, it was growing so fast. We ended up having about 60 members back in 2009, I think it was, and they wanted to look at another structure. Like at that time it was a company set up, and I think you could only have 50 members in a proprietary limited company. And so by then we had 60 members, and so we started looking around for another options. They didn't want to go into a partnership agreement. They didn't want to go a public company, so the other option was going into a co-op. And that transpired in, I think we actually became a co-op in 2013.
And did you know much about, personally, had you ever had much to do with that kind of approach? Were you aware of the others in your part of New South Wales?
Growing up, I knew of the Banana Growers Federation, which was a co-op. Other than that, I had no idea personally.
And obviously Norco, your milk supplier in that neck of the woods, has been a real standout. Yeah,
Norco sort of, there was a Norco milk factory down at Urunga, and that's the only time I'd ever heard of Norco at that stage. They weren't really based around Coffs, like north of Coffs where we are.
And was it your intention at the outset to eventually find yourself onto the board?
No idea at all, no intentions at all. I was quite happy sitting at home enjoying my beers.
And what was the trigger for you to get more involved in the direction of your co-op?
It actually happened. One of my friends was stepping down from the board, and the board were looking for someone else to replace him with, and he actually mentioned my name. And then they asked him if he could come and visit or talk to me about it. I had no intentions even then, but when he said, "Oh, there's not much involved," I said, "Okay, we'll see what happens." So that's when it all started.
And I guess the fact that you did have a business background quite away from, separate and distinct from farming in glass, and I think in the aluminium game, do you think that was a plus for you?
Oh, definitely a plus. I knew how to run a business, definitely. The directors at that time, basically the only business they ran was their own farms, and the co-op was growing so quickly at that time. So I did have a bit more perception about running a business.
And from a standing start, by last year, Oz Group's turnover was around 200 million. And I guess those sorts of growing pains are the sorts of things every organisation or every co-op would like to have. But it obviously intrinsically means you have to be on a very sound financial footing.
Pete, firstly, you've got to get the right people around you. The business was growing so fast. We're still in catch-up mode to where we should have our people skills, even as we speak now.
And do you have a wide range of experience on your board?
We do. We obviously got a CEO, we have a financial officer, we've got 4 in the accounts department, we've got supervisors in the factories, we've got people there, we're always looking out for a better skill set.
And what about a spread of age groups? Because we hear so often that farming in this country is, an elderly person's pursuit, but you've been able to get a bit of young blood into the berry business and into your operation.
Oh, our young blood's really good. They're passionate about the berry industry. They're passionate about the co-op. They're passionate about what they do. They go out there looking, to new ways of doing things. Our children here will go off to university and they'll come back into the family farms. They'll get the education and come back. I just know of recently 2 of my friends, their sons have gone off to university, but they've got one eye back on their farm.
As we've seen throughout this series, a lot of the great lessons, a lot of the great mentorship and encouragement indeed comes from other cooperatives. Has that been the case with yours? Have you looked out to other existing and successfully run co-ops for some ideas and some
I recently reached out to the Geraldton Fishing Club, Basil over there, and asked him a few ideas, which he was very happy with to tell me about. And I actually can't recall the gentleman's name, but he was the ex-chairman of Armoured Co. I called him up for some ideas, how we can do things. We're also part of the Northern Cooperative Alliance based around Lismore, North Coast here. And they come up with some nice ideas to discuss. So, and you get different ideas from different co-ops.
Are you surprised at the level of cooperation among cooperatives and the genuine sort of comradeship virtually that other co-ops want to see new cooperatives succeed?
Peter, I think we're all in the same boat sort of thing. In business, in my long years of business, I actually learned that even if you're a competitor, there's no harm in talking to the opposition. And I think if we all do the same in the cooperative sector, we'll still have the same underlying problems, but I think we can solve them together.
Well, let's, if we can look in a little bit more detail about your co-op structure and the disciplines and the members and the member engagement. Going back to the beginning, what was involved in setting it all up? How did you manage to convince the members that the cooperative model was the right way to go? And how did you come together as, I guess, former competitors almost to work cooperatively?
Well, if you go back to the start, basically, there's 4 members involved that set up the partnership really at that time. What they would, from hearsay, what they were doing was when the prices were good in Melbourne, they'd all send their fruit to Melbourne. If it was good in Sydney, they'd send it to Sydney. The market would collapse back in those days. So they decided to form a partnership together and send the fruit off to different markets at that time. And that seemed successful, and other people wanted to be part of that business. And after a few years, as by 2009, I think they had 60 members. So from there, they went to the cooperative model. There was a bit of a teething issues at that stage because the prior was a company and they had shareholders in there. The premises were owned by about 30 shareholders, but they got eventually paid out, and it took about 3 years to go to the cooperative model.
And are those 4 original members, are they still involved and still part of your co-op?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The families are still involved. The senior members of the families are sort of retired or semi-retired, and their sons have taken over the properties and actually really expanded it really well.
Was it a lengthy process for you to be able to convince and get the trust of people that the approach you settled on was really the way forward for you?
Though the growers are very trusting, to be honest. They thought that's the best way of going because each and everyone had an equal vote on it. It wasn't share-based, it was 1 vote per entity. So even a small grower had a vote and the larger growers had votes. So it was very fair to everyone.
And as I indicated, you've got now up to 150 members. Is there, generally speaking, everybody's pulling in the same direction? How do you overcome any of the difficulties that arise from time to time with so many sort of free spirits, if you like, and Yeah,
we have regular grower meetings, normally monthly before COVID-19 came into place. And we normally have about 40 to 50 members engaging in those meetings. There where the directors mainly attend, they make a point of attending those grower meetings. We have our executive office presenting up-to-date figures to them. We also have our marketers, Driscoll's Australia, attend there to give what's happening in the markets. And on top of that, we'll actually invite guest speakers. We've had from our industry body, Australian Blueberry Growers Association, their executive director come in to explain what they're actually doing for the industry. We've had Department of Primary Industries, industry development officers there for blueberries. We've had land care, we've had Coffs Harbour Council come there to hand out pamphlets so growers could hand out to their contractors on their farm, because a lot of their contractors are from foreign countries, and to see what's involved in going down the beach, swim between the flags, or even as such drive on the left-hand side of the road. So we engage with a lot of the community in that.
Well, it's a very good point that leads us into just the wider impact that cooperatives can have in their neighbourhoods and in their local communities. And as we have seen so often throughout this series, the cooperatives, are really an intrinsic part, an important part of the fabric of their local communities. Have you seen Ausgroup really develop in that way in the Coffs Harbour area and the neighbouring communities?
Yeah, we actively get involved in sponsorship. Annually there's a Blues and Berries festival held up here, which we sponsor. Then also we have a Curry Fest festival up here we actually sponsor. We put sponsorship into junior sporting teams. We actually last year, first time we had a colouring competition for the infant schools. And that went really well with the schools through the area. And the sponsorship obviously helps with the junior teams.
And is the berry industry an important, generator of employment in your area, Stephen?
Pete, we actually employ 40 full-time staff year-round in our pack house and the associated business, and then we will have up to 200 odd people in the pack house during the season. And on top of that, the farms could be employing up to 3,000-4,000 people during the harvest season.
And when's the busiest time for you all?
Normally September, October gets a really busy period. Before that, the season starts to ramp up. But this year it's been a very, very steady one from about April onwards.
And you mentioned COVID-19. What has it done to the berry business and sales and demand for your product?
It has affected sales in our Victorian markets. Victoria was always a strong market for berries. Sales, obviously, restrictions when people are going out to the supermarket and stuff like that, it has affected that. But fortunately, ours has been a steady season this year. We haven't hit a peak. And I think it'll go through steady for some, could have been from the drought last year, could have been the early wet weather we had this year. So there's multiple factors on that.
Now, in terms of where your product goes, just how extensive is the supply lines for you? Where do Ausgroup berries go? And are you in the export biz?
The Ausgroup berries are marketed right around Australia. A lot of them go through Coles, Woolies, Aldi, Costco. Some end up on the market floor. They are right around Australia, and Driscoll's Australia do the marketing for us on that behalf. The export market, we actually, again, Driscoll's the worldwide leader on that. They'll do the marketing for us, but that goes out in our Ausgroup brand to the international markets. But the export market's really only probably a month in the year where you can really export.
And is there any processing involved for your products, Stephen? Are you adding value in some ways?
Yeah, look, there is a process there. The value-added stuff, we're actually now looking at frozen berries, which we should have on the Coles shelves in November. We're actually in the trial system now. Last week we actually trialled 200 kilograms of frozen berries, and from all reports it came through really well. So, and there is other avenues we're touching on. So to actually have so all our growers' produce gets used up.
And will that be an opportunity for you to sort of scale up facilities, processing and freezing facilities in the Coffs Harbour area? How will it work? And will that then involve some significant sort of capital investment?
Oh, we've put a fair bit of capital investment into that freezing line now. Um, it'll be good. Like it'll take care of all our berries that we sort of can't put in the top niche sort of thing. So other than getting rid of them, we'll be able to use it in frozen. Fairly good berries at that too, the good quality stuff.
And when you look around the berry world, is the cooperative model a feature of, you know, where these crops are grown in other parts of the world?
Oh, look, Peter, I sort of can't answer that one for you. There's, I don't know about the cooperative models around the world for berries, to be honest. I think I really can't answer that for you, mate. Around Australia, I think we're the only berry cooperative.
Your decision to not only get on the board, but then assume the position of chairman, was that a logical step for you?
I actually, when the chair at that time stepped down, but he went in as a member of parliament. So there was a vacancy there. I actually suggested to two other guys that they do it. And they bluntly said, no, you do it. So that's how I ended up as chair.
So they identified some characteristics that you had, obviously some drive and clearly some business acumen, which they thought would serve Ausgroup pretty well.
I think it was an age factor there, Pete. I was way older than these guys, and I think they gave me due respect.
And as we said, look, you are attempting to keep several balls in the air at the same time. You have other business interests in that part of the world. It must be a pretty full schedule for you.
Oh, it is. Since I've taken the chair's job on, or as a board of director, I've sort of haven't walked away literally from my business, glass business. My brother's actually looks after a lot more than I do. I'll go in there every now and then, just run my eyes over something. That's about it.
But do you think there's been do they complement one another, and are there things you learn on one side of your business operations and your business brain that you can employ and adapt to the farming?
In business, I learned a lot how to deal with people. You learn a lot of people skills. They came from all walks of life in the building industry, and sometimes you've got to keep quiet, sometimes you've got to push back on them. And also in business, you always got to be looking out for opportunities. When we started just doing repair work and shower screens when we first started, then we got into aluminium windows and doors. It's another opportunity. Then we looked at what else can we do. We looked at security doors for people. So we actually gave people a whole package. And you always got to go out there, look for growth. Once you hit a peak somewhere, there's only one side of that peak, unless you keep reaching for another peak. And I'd like to think we're going to do the same at Ausgroup. We've still got to strive for more and more.
That's terrific. Just a reminder, we are looking for your input tonight as we have this discussion with Stephen Thandi from the Ausgroup Cooperative in New South Wales. And the question we're posing tonight is, what are the biggest pain points for a farming cooperative? Have a go, have your say. Click on the poll in the live chat to the right of this stream to select your answer. Now, looking now to marketing matters, Stephen, and capital raising, and looking to the future and innovation, how does the marketing strategy for the cooperative work? You know, we've noticed increasingly that the Ausgroup brand itself is more prominent in supermarkets. How did that come about, and what impact has it had on your sales?
As mentioned earlier, we use Driscoll's Australia as a 100% marketing, but probably about a year ago, we actually started marketing under the Ausgroup brand, the 100% farmer-owned product sort of thing, and we've gotten such good feedback on that. Everyone knew Ausgroup, that we did berries, but they never saw the product on the shelves. Now they're actually seeing that product on the shelves. So it's been great branding.
And as we've seen so often in this series, the backstory, as consumers come to understand where the product's coming from, how it's produced, and indeed who produces it, it's an important part of your selling. And as you've told us already in our discussion today, It started quite modestly, a pretty small packing shed, now to a truly world-class facility with automated packing lines. How do you continue to innovate? You said you're always scanning the horizon, and what else are you interested in perhaps investing in the medium to short, the short to medium term?
We're always looking for something to improve performance, make sure our product goes out in first class condition, minimise recalls. We actually had metal detectors on all our packing lines before the needle in the store issues. We're all done and dusted on that. We've just recently, our CEO and myself went up to Bundaberg recently. We actually saw a pick and pack machine up there, how they people were doing it up there. We installed that this year. Now, it's going really well, so we'll put more CapEx into that to make the more efficiencies in the pack house. We've done this frozen stuff now, so we're always out there looking for something new.
The food safety issue that you touched on is obviously paramount to everybody who's in the food and food supply game in this country. I guess you learnt some salutary lessons for that, and I guess a reminder to everybody who's in this business that you are sort of one incident away from a devastating crisis.
That's right. Yeah, we've through our industry body, we've sort of got things in place, but at the end of the day, anybody can do something stupid for you, but you have to get your own house in order first.
And are you more confident now that you're better placed and have protocols in place to deal as swiftly as possible with anything like this in the future?
I think we are. I think the issue that happened last year, I think was the year before, I think it's made everyone more and more aware of what is possible out there.
We spoke briefly about international markets. How difficult is it to get a foothold in those, and has the past 6 months thrown up any extra obstacles in the way of getting your fruit from the north coast of New South Wales right around the berry-eating world?
Look, we use a marketing partner for that. We have sent fruit ourselves into Middle East. Hasn't been an issue. We've sent it into India a couple of years ago. Mostly our stuff goes into existing markets in Asia. So to us at this stage, it hasn't been a big issue.
In terms of the actual crops themselves, how much research and development and genetic improvement is going on in your varieties, and where are you getting those leads from?
We use two people for genetics. One's Driscoll's, who have worldwide genetics. They spend millions and millions of dollars into genetic development. And another one is a locally based firm out of Lismore. It's called Mountain Blue Orchards, and Ridley Belder, the owner of Mountain Blue Orchards, they call the guru of blueberry genetics in Australia, if not the world. And what's the next hot thing in terms of genetics? What are you looking at creating? Something bigger, something more with better shelf life? What is it? The shelf life is improving. In the old days, shelf life was about 18 days. Now it can vary up to 30 days. So the genetics are absolutely improving, and the size of the berries are getting larger too.
Now, we did touch on this a little earlier, but in terms of the value adding and in terms of, I guess, using the entire crop, the introduction of a capacity to freeze some of your product, I guess, is a really important part of your future as well.
Oh, it is. That'll take a fair bit of pressure off our growers during the peak season. We'll be able to use that fruit into our frozen stuff, which will hopefully sort of keep the prices a bit more buoyant than before.
Now, in terms of the all-important issue of capital raising, how important was it to establish as early as you could a good relationship with banks, and did you find they had much of an understanding about how co-ops operated and their unique capacity to raise capital.
Yeah, Pete, Coffs Harbour's always been a strong agricultural town. So the banks had a relationship with the existing farmers already. Even going back to 2001 when Aussie-berries started up, the banks have moved with you. And as the co-op grew, the bank grew with us. We as a co-op has never had a problem raising funds, only because even now you've got the four major banks here. They'll come and talk to us and they'll see where the industry's heading or what the industry's up to. So we have a good relationship with the major banks here.
So a pretty good level of agricultural literacy in your local financial institutions.
There is, yeah, yes.
Oh, that's good. Now, look, in terms of some of the other outreach programs that you have in your community, are you assisting growers with some of those agronomic challenges and as you said, the incorporation of the latest and greatest genetics from either Bristol or...
Yeah, with our agronomy team, we have 3 agronomists on our board in-house. And since we've put our agronomists on, we've noted that the growers are using less fertilisers, they're using less chemicals, they're using less water, which helped because before we put our agronomists on, we were actually using the agronomists from the firms that supply you the fertilisers and that. But our agronomists have gone in there now and done the hard jacket, and we've cut back a lot of the stuff. With the agronomists, we have 2 compliance officers, which helps the farmers with day-to-day stuff, audits, and if they've got some issue with essential energy or NRA in New South Wales. Because a lot of our farmers, English is not their first language. So they do need help a lot of times. And they reach out to our team.
So a real one-stop shop in that regard. Your part of the world is a particularly rapidly growing and a very attractive place as more people take a tree change or a seed change. Does it put you sometimes in conflict with other landholders or people moving in there and opening subdivisions and things? Do you find you've got issues like that?
Oh, we do have issues with landholders. It's normally in only certain pockets of the area. It's not broad-based where you used to have the banana farms and that. It's not such a big issue. But whether, let's say, how do you call it? People just go for lifestyle and they want 100 acres around them. It's agricultural land, but they are not so happy to have a farm pop up next door.
Yes, it's the conundrum we see on the fringes of most of our significant cities and certainly regional cities as well. People move there for particular reasons, but to be closer to nature or closer to the farming environment, but they don't necessarily like what that involves.
That's right.
I guess as we get to the end of our interview, Stephen, it would be good to get some thoughts from you about some of the important lessons that you've learnt so far in the journey that help all sides of your business operations. What are some of the things that have really stuck out for you so far?
I think one of the biggest lessons in the cooperative world is you've got to communicate a lot with your members. You've got to actually let them know. To them, at the end of the day, it's their business. They want to know everything of what's happening. And they get involved in everything. The younger guys seem to actually move on a bit. They're quite happy with the board or the executives doing their jobs. But the older growers, because they're used to making the final decisions on their farm, they sort of get in your ear a bit. And you've got to keep explaining to them about the co-op model. It could be a month-on-month situation where you go over the same hash. Yeah, and that's a big thing in co-op, is you've got to actually communicate clearly with your growers.
And I guess to the extent that you can do that and do that successfully, you lay the foundations for the future strength of your co-op. And I guess, in a sense, at the end of it, it comes down to the trust that you generate through a small number of members right up to the situation now where you've got nearly 150.
The trust comes from basically living in this area too. It comes from knowing these families. Like my dad knew their dads. I knew other people, and our kids grew up together, so they do have a trust factor there. They also trust your neighbour, sort of thing. You know, if they'll go and ask them for advice and say, you know, what are you doing on your farm? And that farmer will give advice back. The trust is also in having regular grower meetings. The trust is there when the directors are open to these phone calls 7 days a week. The trust is there, it comes out of, you know, the executives open to these guys knocking on the door, can we come in, we want to talk to you. So you've got to build that trust.
Well, it sounds like things are proceeding pretty smoothly and firmly on that front, Stephen Thandi. We really appreciate your time today and your insights. It's been fascinating to learn about the growth of the berry business in the New South Wales North Coast, and good luck with you, and good luck as the season rolls through. We appreciate your company. We want you to make sure that you tune in to our roundtable, which will be coming up next tonight, where we'll be looking at sharing knowledge and data and all the advantages, disadvantages, and safeguards that you need to do all those things. And we will be joined tonight by Doriana Mangili from the Sweeter Banana Cooperative over in Carnarvon in Western Australia. We'll be talking to Dick Groot-Obink from the Eat Truffle Marketing Co-op. We'll be hearing again from Greg McNamara from Norco, not far from where Stephen's operation has been on in the north coast of New South Wales. And of course, we'll be joined by the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals CEO, Melina Morrison. That's coming up next at 7:45. We want you to be across some of the earlier episodes in our series. It's been rolling along quite successfully. We've covered an awful lot of ground and an awful lot of issues which will be of interest to you in the Cooperative Conversation series. Go to conversations.coopfarming.coop to find our full lineup of episodes. And remember, the series is available now and on demand. If tonight's really got you inspired and you want to have a look at how a co-op could work for your business, or maybe you're already exploring the option of cooperative models for your community and want some assistance, just go to the Cooperative Farming website for a bunch of different ways that the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals can help you and assist. There are even educational bursaries available to support farmers, fishers and foresters to access the relevant cooperative education information. And there's a hotline. So if you want to speak to someone to find out what you need to start up a co-op, give them a buzz. But for now, that's it. We hope you can join us for the roundtable later. Once again, great thanks to Stephen Thandi from the Oz Group, and see you soon.